Don't stop till you get enough. Wah, 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 wah. Man, Rohit Raju here. I watched Michael, the biopic, the first one, because I guess there's going to be two this weekend. About Michael Jackson, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of biased about this. I grew up in the prime Michael Jackson era. I'm an '80s baby. So I was there with Beat It. Like I'm prime Beat It. My mother, Michael Jackson blew up in the 80s. And I don't think people understand how larger than life Michael was. And he was one of the first guys to get black music, black videos played on MTV. And he was also mainstream. Like everyone loved Michael Jackson. And he was a black singer, pop singer. And he transcended everything. And he had lines, but he was famous with the Jackson 5 and the Jacksons. But when he broke out on his own, Off the Wall, he did real well. But man, Thriller, that set the tone. And we'll kind of get into that. But I want to talk about the movie. So I want to say I'm kind of biased. But I also I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. Because the critics, I don't understand their rating. Like the initial rating for this, the critics tore this up. And I don't agree with that at all. Like it wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. There was a lot left on the table. There was a lot of stuff they could have covered. Like I felt like the Jackson brothers were just kind of there. They had no real personality. His mother was fine, played by the great Nia Long. Coleman Domingo did a fantastic job as Joe Jackson. Now, here's the thing. It was Joe Jackson, because Coleman Domingo was very supervillainish in this movie. And I really wonder if Joe was that domineering and that, kind of heartless. Like after Michael had caught his hair on fire and was still in the hospital and all he cared about was Michael performing. And I was just like, man, was he really like that? Did he not love his kid? Was he really that much of a taskmaster? And this is heavily influenced. Like the Jacksons had a huge hand in this, the Jackson family. And I will say it was weird that I think Rebe Jackson and of course Janet Jackson are omitted in this. I believe Janet wanted nothing to do with it. I don't know about the other Jackson sister, but they didn't even mention them by name. So I thought that was kind of weird. And that, it is kind of odd. LaToya is the only sister in here. But I did feel like it was weird that the other Jackson sisters weren't in it. And then the Jackson 5, the rest of the brothers were just kind of like, they were just kind of there. And I feel like Michael's story is so epic that it's hard to cover it in just 2 hours. The Jacksons, the American Family, they had that miniseries. That did a pretty good job. But this, I believe, it was still good, right? I still enjoyed this movie. I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua. Jafar Jackson, holy shit. He does an amazing job. And as Child Michael, Giuliano Valdi does great. Like I said, Nia Long is great. But man, does Jafar Jackson, even his acting is really good. And I don't know what to expect. And he nails the mannerisms, the voice, the dancing. I mean, when they do the Rock With Me video and then the Thriller video, and it looks like shot for shot. It's amazing. And then they do the Motown 25 when he did Billie Jean. And, that was the first time you saw the moonwalk. Yeah, man, he nailed it. And he really did a good job. There's a time when he gets the first nose job and he's 80s Michael, he's Thriller Michael. You look at it and you're like, he looks like Michael Jackson, looks and sounds and moves like Michael Jackson. So having that authenticity and being played by, I believe it's Jermaine's kid, his nephew, he nails it. And he really sucks you into the movie. And like I said, this movie isn't the best movie I've ever seen. It sure as hell isn't as bad as the critics are saying. This movie was very fun. They kind of have a cheat code with the soundtrack being Michael Jackson songs. Man, how the hell are you going to dislike that? You know what I'm saying? But they do a good job. They cover the Jackson, kind of the humble beginnings. There was no Smokey Robinson in this, though. There was no Diana Ross. I believe the one lady was supposed to be Gladys Knight, but she's only in it for a minute. So there was a lot of icons that were affiliated with Michael Jackson that were not in this movie. And I don't know if that's just because they had to cut so much. Maybe they didn't get the rights. I don't know. I have no idea behind that. But I did notice that. And I always thought Diana Ross discovered them. But in this, the one lady from Motown discovers them. So I don't know the full thing. I got to go back and watch the documentary on Michael. I've watched so many over the years, but it's been a long time since I really revisited Michael Jackson. And I did this with Bruce Lee recently. Like, Bruce Lee is one of my favorite martial arts actors, whatever you want to call it, and martial artists and philosophers of all time. I grew up on Bruce Lee, and I hadn't watched Bruce Lee in a very long time. I think it's been a few years. And I just popped on one of his movies one day. I just wanted to watch it. And I forgot how fucking awesome Bruce Lee was. And same thing with this. I watched a couple live performances after I watched the movie. And Jafar does such a good job with this. But you forget how awesome Michael Jackson is. Like, he, as an entertainer, he's a force of nature. And he is, and there's a generation that really doesn't know him. Man, you're missing out. Like I was saying, when I was a kid and Thriller came out, it was groundbreaking. Like, they had when his videos played, it was an event. Like, they would play it every hour after it debuted. And it was like the most watched shit you could do, right? Like, everybody was watching it. And then they had the making of Thriller. It was a VHS tape. And that was like one of the best selling VHS tapes of all time at that time. Just because, and it was just the making of. And Michael he was beyond larger than life. He transcends, he's one of those special individuals that transcends time, transcends race, transcends generations. He's timeless. His music is timeless. You can put it on today and most likely people will know it, and they'll probably know, at least be able to hum along to it. And that's special. Like, that's very, very special. And I remember, like, he was everywhere. I had like the Michael Jackson doll, and I had this little Michael Jackson glove pendant because he wore the sparkly glove. My mom worked with someone that they were making those gloves, and I had that glove. She brought it home for us, and I never took that glove off. I had it, and my mom would take me. I was like very, very young with all of this, and I'm surprised I remember these memories because I was young, like super young. And my mom would take me to like house parties. Like, the neighbors would have a house party. Nothing crazy, right? But the kids would be there, and the neighbors would be playing or the parents would be playing cards and listening to music. Well, they would play Thriller or a Michael Jackson song. And I'll never forget, there was a house party and Thriller started playing. And I got up, and I was a shy kid. But, when I'm in my element, like, reality, but like wrestling and shit, I perform. I got up and I started dancing, and everybody was watching me, hooting and hollering, and I'm a kid. And I'm out there just doing the Michael Jackson moves, and I was like 3 years old or something like that. And I was just going to town, man. And that's how much he influenced, like, even all the way to the 90s, the Bad album. And I was so stuck on the Thriller album, that I forget how great the Bad album was. And there was a few, like, just absolute bangers even after that. I love You Rock My World, Smile, when he did the based off the Charlie Chaplin, because he was a huge Charlie Chaplin fan. There's a few other ones too, like From the Blood on the Dance Floor and The Dangerous, Leave Me Alone, Man in the Mirror. Like, man, he's had so many great hits. And I will actually go through, there's one, I think it was a Pepsi commercial he did, where he is playing I'll Be There, but then they kind of have, like, he's reminiscing when he was with the Jackson 5. Then all of a sudden, like, in a shadow, like, in behind him, like a shadow, but it's like him as a kid, and they start singing the song together. Man, and I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And then people on YouTube, what they'll do is they'll take songs of his and they'll drop the music out. So it's like a cappella. And his voice is just so one of a kind. Even as a little kid, he was like, what, 8 years old, dancing like Jackie Wilson and James Brown. I mean, like moving. If you've never seen him dance as a kid, a little boy, he was killing it. So Michael Jackson is just, he's a force of nature. He's larger than life. He transcends race, gender. So like everyone loves Michael Jackson, or at least they did. And, of course, there was the stuff. They couldn't cover the accusations because I guess the reshoots were $120 million because they were talking about it, but then they couldn't because apparently when they were, doing it, they were found out that it was illegal for them to cover like the cases, and they couldn't have the guy, I think his name was Jordan something, the first person that accused him, and so but they weren't allowed to do that, so they had to reshoot it. And bravo for them for trying to tackle it. Now, granted, this movie makes Michael look like a saint, which I was hoping we'd go a little bit more behind the scenes and see how Michael was as a person. Obviously, he was very reserved, and they do a decent job of that. But I feel like once they start getting into Thriller, it becomes almost like a little mini concert, and that happens all the way up until the very end of when they go into the Bad Tour. And Jafar Jackson, they do a great job with his makeup, and like I said, he looks like him. Even at the end there, when he's kind of has a lighter skin, he looks like him during Bad. I think it was 88. And they even cover when he gets his hair catches on fire. And I actually was watching a documentary. I didn't get a chance to finish it, but I was watching a documentary, and they showed footage of that, and Michael's hair was like, it was crazy, like what happened. Like his, he had, back then they had the jerry curls. They had all the product and shit in their hair. So the sparks happen, the pyro goes off, and a spark lands on his head, and it catches his head on fire. And his head was on fire. It looked crazy. They do cover that. And then I don't think the media really talked about it a lot, but Michael did a lot of charity work. And this was, I guess, I saw this, they had pictures of when Michael was in the hospital. He was visiting burn victims while he was there. And he ended up opening a wing, the Michael Jackson burn victim wing. And, he put a lot of money into that. But he was going around just visiting with these burn victims, talking with them, and just trying to bring them a little bit of peace. And he did that a lot with sick kids. And then when he had Neverland Ranch, which I think he did that, he moved there in 88. Because he was living with the family. The family lived together for the longest time in Encino, California. But he ended up leaving in 88. I think that's when he got Neverland Ranch. But he would always have a bunch of kids over, and like sick kids. And it was a giant amusement park. And I do feel like, obviously, Michael was very weird. He did have vitiligo, but I do believe he was bleaching his skin, and he kept going on with the nose job. So it looked like he didn't have a nose at the end. He did the stuff with his cheekbones, but I don't think Michael was happy with the way he looked. I think his appearance was probably, he was probably ashamed of his appearance, or very sensitive about it as a kid. And you could tell he was very young. Fame came very quickly after they were discovered, and he probably didn't have a childhood. And I hope the stuff that he was accused of, I hope it really didn't happen. I don't think it did, and I hope it didn't, because I am a fan of Michael Jackson. I think he's such a talented artist, and he really put a stamp on his life. I mean, he put a mark on this world. The whole "We Are the World" thing, they didn't cover that. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff they didn't cover. Quincy Jones was in there for a bit. That was cool. Berry Gordy was in there for a bit. His bodyguard played a large part, so that was cool. Joe Jackson, obviously. Neil Long had a couple decent parts, but most of it was in a very submissive role, I'd say, to Joe. It was funny. Dion Cole played Don King. That was kind of out of nowhere. But it was cool because they set up the Victory Tour. But it was a very good movie. It was very enjoyable, and it was very fun. And that could be because, like I said, they had the cheat code of having that soundtrack. And it's hard when you have Michael Jackson songs. Like right off the bat, I was tapping my foot, singing along. It's just like you can't help but feel good when that music's playing. So, but man, I enjoyed it. Definitely not as bad as the critics. Critics like shit all over it. I didn't think it was that bad at all. It was something I would watch again. Like when it comes to streaming, I'm gonna watch it because I just had fun. I had a fun time with this movie. I do wish there's definitely a better movie in there somewhere. If they could have dug a little bit deeper and got really behind the process of Michael, his like mind, how he worked, how he was affected by things. They dabble in that, but there was so much more they could have done so we could really get to know the man of Michael Jackson. But other than that, I highly recommend this if you're a fan. It's probably one of the best biopics I've ever seen. Michael Jackson is probably one of the greatest entertainers of all time. Like Freddie Mercury was a really great entertainer. Prince was. And of course, I'm a wrestler, so I'm really big into wrestling. So I see entertainers all the time like Macho Man, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ric Flair, guys like that, Hogan, larger than life performers that transcend their form of entertainment and they become household names. And Michael Jackson, I believe, is the household name. Like everyone knows who Michael Jackson is. Everyone knows a Michael Jackson song and can probably hum or sing along to it. And I'm sure there's at least one that everyone likes because he was just that talented. He was such a perfectionist. He had such energy, and his energy was infectious. I mean, people were screaming nonstop at his shows, passing out. And he was just amazing, man. He was such an amazing performer and artist. But the movie, I know I talked a lot about Michael Jackson and not as much about the movie, but I really feel like the movie's fun. It's really good. Like I said, there's a lot more they could have covered. There's a lot they skipped, but I'm sure that's hard to do in a 2-hour time window. But I do feel like it could have been a little bit deeper. They could have had a little bit more meat in that stew, and they could have dug a little deeper. Maybe the sequel will, because they did a sequel that got greenlit. So I'm sure it'll be like, kind of when he falls off a little bit. And I just watched clips of that. I think it was the Michael Jackson 30. I think it was, I don't know if it was his birthday, but it was like the 30th anniversary of maybe Michael, maybe Thriller. I can't remember what it was. But he was, he looked all weird and shit, but he was doing his hits and he was still moving, man. Moving like $1,000,000. Just amazing stuff. And, I will say this, going back to like when Jafar Jackson, he does a great job when they showcase the Motown 25, when he does Billie Jean and does the moonwalk for the first time. He does a really good job of that. And that moment was huge. Like absolutely huge. And when people saw Michael perform for the first time, it jet setted him, skyrocketed, out of this world. And he did the moonwalk for the first time. And people in the crowd were losing their minds. And we were losing our minds at home on, watching him on TV. And he was just a very special individual. And I think Jafar does a great job of capturing Michael. And there's some weird stuff too. Like they got like Bubbles, the CG, but maybe they didn't want to work with a real chimp. And like I said, not the best movie I've ever seen, but it was very, very well done. The choreography in this alone is so good. Like, my God. Like, when they're doing Beat It, and even, like, the two of the backup dancers, like, the main ones look like the dudes that were from the video. And Jafar just does an amazing job. I can't sing his praise enough. He did such an amazing job in this. And everyone did great. Coleman Domingo, he's a fantastic actor. He did great as Joe Jackson. And I wish there was a little bit more for everybody. But it is called Michael, and the Jackson, estate was involved in this. But what'd you guys think? Did you watch it? What'd you think? I thought it was a blast, and it was a movie I highly recommend that I'll watch again, and I hope the sequel is just as good. But we'll see. But I highly recommend this movie, even if you're not a fan of Michael Jackson. I still think it's a fun watch, and I'm glad they covered a lot of his charity work because I do feel like, I know a lot of people say, well, he's weird with the kids, whatever. I think he just was a big kid. He didn't have a childhood. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm not wrong. I hope he wasn't like a weirdo when it comes to like a lot of that stuff he got accused of. But I really feel like his childhood was jacked up. I just think he was a big kid. And I can't remember if this was true or not, but this might be some fun trivia for you. He did some music for Sonic 3 and went uncredited or put his name in the credits as a different person. I have to research that. but I'm pretty sure that was what happened. I'm going to pause it real quick because I want to find out if that was true. So apparently that was true. Michael Jackson was involved in composing music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but went uncredited, largely because he was reportedly unhappy with how the Sega Genesis soundtrack reproduced his music. Little does he know, man, Sonic Hedgehog music, whether it's MIDI or not, fire to this day. Ice Cap Zone, fuck, man, come on. Do 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 do. Absolute fire. Apparently, he was a long-term collaborator. Brad Buxer confirmed Michael Jackson's involvement, noting they worked on several tracks, including the Staff Roll theme, which shares similarities with "Stranger in Moscow." How that's fire. That's so awesome, man. That's so good, man. I think that's cool. That he did that. But yeah, man. Again, watch the movie. It was a really good movie. Way better than the critics gave it. The score they gave it was fucking terrible. And this movie's good, man. It's probably one of the better biopics I've seen in a very long time. And it honestly could be recency bias, but it might be my favorite. So do yourself a favor, check this movie out. I think apparently it's killing it at the box office. No surprise there. Michael's a legend, known worldwide. He's timeless, so it doesn't surprise me. So if you get a chance, check it out. And if you did watch it, what'd you think? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Answer in the comments and let me know why. Take care.